Processors, the one thing that make it all work. Without it you may not be able to. You get the idea? Okay, it is simple. Processors processes things like arithmetic instructions, logical control and input or output operation. People from 80s and 90s have seen processor evolve in speed and compactness. With the help of graphics card, we came from crappy graphics in the game to the mesmerizing, astonishing graphics that look so real. And now even a phone has the capability to do such great things, considering its size. Okay, too big introduction, I'm sorry. Now almost everyone knows how to use PCs and mobiles, and if you have paid attention while buying or using them, you pay attention while buying, right? You may have seen i3, i5, Pentium 3, Pentium 4 processors with their processing speed in gigahertz. But why are these things given as 32-bit processors and 64-bit processors? And the same is for operating system. Windows 10 32-bit, 64-bit, or even x86 and x64? What is going on here? Actually, some very old processors are even 16-bit and 8-bit. Well, simply put, every processors have different capacity of how much data they can process at one time. For example, an 8-bit processor can process 8-bit data at a time. That means you can process an 8-digit long hexadecimal number at a time. What is hexadecimal? You can understand it here. So, a n-bit processor always means n-bit data processed at a time, with the exception of some processors. So does that mean 64-bit processor can process more data than a 32-bit processor at a time? Absolutely, but not always. Let's say you have 32-bit processor. The number of location it can address to is 4 GB. That means, assuming your OS don't come in the way, you can use 4 GB of RAM at most in a 32-bit processor. Any more RAM than that won't make it work faster. But theoretically, 64-bit processor can address to 16 exabytes. That's right, you can theoretically use 16 million terabytes of RAM in a 64-bit processor. But the real question is there a RAM that holds that much space? No. Sure, there are way more than 4 GB RAM, but if you use just 4 GB RAM in a 64-bit processor, the processor won't work faster than a 32-bit processor. It is just one factor. There are many other factors of processing speed of processor. Now, the operating systems are 32-bit and 64-bit too. And as you can guess, 32-bit OS are obviously made for 32-bit processor and 64-bit for 64-bit processor. Some applications use the extra bits in the 64-bit system for the speed advantage and release apps for both 32-bit and 64-bit OS. Note that you can use the 32-bit software in a 64-bit OS, but you can't use the 64-bit software in a 32-bit OS without a special software for it. Now, why x86 for 32-bit but x64 for 64-bit? I mean, why 32-bit is treated with special care? Well, back in 80s, there were these Intel microprocessors, the 80386 series and 80486 series. Both of them were popular for a 32-bit microprocessor. So, when the new latest 32-bit processors came, they were given this suffix 86, thus x86. This is just a marketing technique to make the new models more popular, I guess. I hope you understand the difference between these two types of processors currently in use. If you already knew all of that, please kindly stop watching the video. I'll be back with more.